Hey everyone, so in this video I'm going to talk about desirable difficulty and what that means for learning the piano well and probably a lot of other things well as well. So yeah, it's basically purposely making things difficult for the sake of learning better, learning faster, obviously quite counterintuitively because most of us are probably going to avoid the things that are difficult rather than obviously seeking it out on purpose. So I'd go through like a few quick examples. One of my favorites that comes to mind quickly is this idea of like visual learners, auditory learners, and so on. So often when starting to teach a new student, that student may, and there's nothing wrong with sharing this. Obviously, it's good to know this about the student, know what they think about themselves, get a sense of what they feel about their strengths and weaknesses. But they may say like, oh, actually, I'm a visual learner, so I would actually learn much faster if you showed me like directly how to play, right? If you could just show me on the screen how to play this part, or if you could like demonstrate right in front of me, right? If they're in person, for instance, I think I would learn the best that way or faster that way. And often after they say that, probably most teachers would just show them how to do that directly. And often I won't do that. And it's really not purposely to be mean or contrary, but just because something is easiest for somebody doesn't mean that will lead to the deepest learning for them. Nor does it mean that they'll progress the fastest or with the best quality with that suggestion. So, for instance, if somebody says, oh, like I'm a visual learner, you show them directly, they're spending a very small amount of brain power, not having to make new connections, not having to do anything that's challenging their brain. So they may just fall into kind of muscle memory, automatic thinking, even mindless thinking. But if you purposely teach them using other methods, you say, like, okay, I hear what it is that you're saying, but let's try having you actually find the notes, assuming that when they said visual, they meant like directly copying your hand, right? Let's have you try to, decipher the notes on the page and figure that out, or let's have you try to figure it out through listening, or let's try to, intellectualize it out, perhaps, whatever methods it is that you may use. If you teach them in this way, they struggle, and then eventually they get it. That is greatly increased cognitive effort, and time has proven again and again that this leads to a deeper level of learning because of that increased effort. So it's difficulty that we're seeking out because it really imprints much more strongly in the memory. The more effortful, as long as it's successful in the end, the better, typically. So there was another study, of course don't remember which one offhand, in some book that I read a while ago, where those that were just like taking notes using old-fashioned paper and paper and pencil, or pen and pencil, or whatever, or pen and paper, or whatever it may be, they seem to recall much better than those that were typing away on laptops. Even though those that were typing away could record a lot more information, those that were just, doing the old-fashioned writing, because that took so much more effort, they seem to be able to retain much more, do much better on the exam and so on, because presumably because they had to focus so much more on what it is that they were writing. They had to be selective about what it is they were writing as well, because they couldn't maybe write as fast as people were typing. So they were spending that brain power, and also the physical act of writing, honestly, is forcing them to expend more effort as well too. Some other things that I think about, for instance, the performance training, performance challenges that I was talking about in another recent video. That's maybe a different type of desirable difficulty. Maybe in the formal learning research, they wouldn't necessarily cite examples such as these as the same type of desirable difficulty, but for me, like, it's not really the formalized scientific terms that are important. It's the idea of it, what you can take away with it and use in your practice and in your life. So for instance, purposely making things difficult for yourself in terms of performance. Like I talked about, like the freezing hands, sweaty hands, putting on like a big coat or a backpack, elevating your heart rate, playing maybe like blindfolded or with the lights off, right? This is, again, purposely introducing difficulty when you're performing, in this case, so that in comparison, then it's very easy to perform under relatively more normal conditions. So that would be another example that comes to mind here. And honestly, difficult things are happening in life all the time, right? Without going too far down that rabbit hole, it sounds cliche, but whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And that's, I think, once we realize that and understand that, we start to actually seek out the difficulties, not to the point that we're just completely ruining our own lives, but we seek them out as learning opportunities, effectively, right? The more you fail, the more you learn, and you start to realize the value of failing, of seeking out, the less traveled path, the difficult path, and so you recognize that there are maybe some cliche elements in maybe in just kind of reiterating some of these platitudes here, but still there's tremendous value in doing the more difficult type of performance, doing a learning style that you're not typically used to. I think another thing that comes to mind that I'm sure I'll talk about in a future video would be purposely not helping students, I guess. Even when sometimes in the beginning they initially ask for help. And that, again, might seem strange, but if you help somebody too much in the beginning, they ask you, like before they've even tried a given piece, for instance, like, oh, could you help me with this? Could you show me the hand position for this? Like, are these notes right? Is this finger incorrect? And you're like, oh, it's actually this, right? Just do this. Okay, that's good. That's correct now. Or like, oh, you're about to play like a 3 instead of a 2. They may leave the lesson feeling very good about what's happened, but actually without you there correcting them in real time, hovering over them the whole time, they probably won't be able to catch any mistakes on their own. So the moment they leave the lesson, they lose all that power of independence. Whereas instead, if you actually let them struggle, you let them make mistakes, you let them do things incorrectly, then you come in and you assess how they're doing. You're able to see really like their real ability if they completely practice independently of you. You see their genuine strengths and weaknesses, and then if you correct them, the research consistently shows that they will remember that far better than if you had just given them the answer right off the bat. And I'm sure I'll expand upon this in future videos about, rapidly acquiring independence and so on. So, so just some general thoughts there about seeking out difficulties, seeking out challenges, and recognizing like what a large role that plays in our learning process. So looking forward to speaking more about this in the future. Please like and subscribe, leave a comment perhaps if you found that useful, and looking forward to seeing you guys again soon.